Yo, I'm Brendan, and today I'm sharing with you 4 money questions that you need to answer together before you get married. Money and fighting over money is one of the top causes of divorce today, and so if you can be on the same page with your partner when it comes to money, whether you're getting married now or whether you've been married for like a decade, I'm going to propose to you 4 different questions. Propose. This is actually the acts I used to propose to my wife. I'll propose to you 4 different questions that you can start this conversation with. Discuss these 4 things with your partner, and then I'm actually going to give you this whole template to go through together that takes you through a financial plan for you and your future. And if you want to, I will make this template available to you. I'll revamp it a little bit so that you can see everything kind of in a clear, concise, updated way, and you can fill out your own answers. But I've got one request for you, and that's if you get the template, you've got to go to File, Make a Copy. If you just start trying to type in your own information, it's going to send a message to me and say, so-and-so is requesting edit access. You're trying to access this original file that I'm literally in right now and showing you. Can't do it. I'm not going to share it with you because that means you're changing the source for everybody and your numbers are going to be in there for everyone to see. So instead of doing that, go right here in this top left corner, go to File, Make a Copy, and then what it'll do is copy a version of this whole thing with all the numbers and all the tabs and everything intact for you into your own Google Sheets in a private place for you to fill this out, and then you can share that with your partner. You guys can do all this work yourselves and have that be separate because you don't want to put all your information out there for all of us anyway, but also I'm not going to let you change this original one. All right, let's keep going. Without further ado, here are the 4 questions that you can have a discussion with first before we actually get into the tactical steps of how to work through this together. The first question that you can ask each other just to start to understand where the other person stands is, what are your general thoughts about money today? Just flesh them out a little bit. Like when you think about money, what kind of feelings come up in you? How does your body respond when someone talks about money, income, salaries, investing, retirement, all that kind of stuff? Are you energized by it? Are you depressed by it? Are you afraid? Does your skin crawl because you're uncomfortable with the subject? Maybe you never talked about it before. Or are you excited? Are you like, yeah, I'm excited because I have goals around this and I want to get some stuff done and whatever. To be clear here, there are no right or wrong answers. What our goal here in this step especially is just to understand the other person, the person sitting across from you who loves you, who wants to spend their life with you. Where are they at? Our goal is to empathize with them and figure out where are they at, and then later on we'll compare and contrast where you are at. But we've got to take enough time to understand them. If you're instigating this conversation, you're probably more ready to talk about this than the other person is. So give them a chance to talk first if they want to. Sit patiently, let them finish, then you take your turn. Now we'll go into question number 2. Question number 2 is, what did you hear about money and related topics growing up? So when you're a kid around home, what did your parents, guardians, family members, people who raised you, what did they say about money? What were their high points and low points with money? What did they talk about when they talked about their job and their career and what that meant to them? Did they invest? Did they not invest? Did they have a positive experience or a negative experience? So for me, whenever I'm thinking about this, I think about people being stressed with money, there not being enough money to go around, the elements of the business that my parents were in that was stressful to them. I heard some horror stories of investing, family members that had thought they were making a lot of money and then ended up losing money, financial advisors that they thought were trustworthy that ended up really not being that trustworthy or competent. So there was a lot of kind of ups and downs when it came to money, but most of it was stress, scarcity, cautionary tales, that kind of thing. To be clear, I don't think the answers to this question are binary, positive or negative. I think for a lot of people, it can be a mix of those, because the goal is for you to develop an understanding and an awareness of how you consciously and subconsciously feel about money. So the first question was, what do you consciously think and feel about money? Second question here is a little bit more of like, let's try and dredge up some of the subconscious opinions you have about money, whether you realize it or not. Like there could be a reaction here when somebody goes, oh yeah, and I'm going to plan on investing. Maybe your partner says that and you go, ugh, investing? Well, that's too risky. That's scary. Well, that's interesting. How do we come up with that opinion? Maybe it was something that you heard growing up, that investing is a risky, scary, not good idea. So let's get all those things out on the table now. Again, no judgment, no criticism, just empathy and understanding. We're just fact-finding here. We're just becoming aware of where the other person is at and aware of where we're at. This is an interesting exercise to figure out where your ideas come from too. All right, question number 3, what do you want to do with your money overall right now? So assuming that you've got some kind of income happening, you've got some kind of money at your disposal, what general topic, area, use case for money do you find yourself settling on and prioritizing? Are you most focused on saving and security? Are you focused on what the money will be able to purchase you in terms of like fun objects or just kind of stuff you've always wanted? Are you like looking forward to, let's say, getting a higher income so that you can buy better stuff? Are you looking forward to what an income can get you in terms of vacations? It could be retirement. You could be thinking about nothing in particular. You could just think of, hey, maybe we'll get a nicer house someday and maybe we'll buy slightly nicer clothes, or maybe we won't, but I don't think about it. That's a fine answer too. And the trick to this question working is that we're actually honest with each other. We've got to be honest enough to say, this is immediately where my thought process goes when it comes to money. Like for me right now, if you said, I'm going to drop $100,000 in your lap, what would you do? My first impulse would be, can I go buy a fun car? I'm sure some of you are like, that's ridiculous. That's reckless. Brendan, why would you do that? Maybe you're new here. You don't understand how much I love burritos and race cars, but I would want to go get a breakfast burrito, sit down on my computer, go on an auction site and bid on something awesome and bring home a fun car. That's my honest answer. My wife's answer would be radically different. She might want to remodel something in the house. She'd probably want to redo our landscaping outside because it's like full of weeds and or dead. We've got drastically different literal current use cases for our money if we had more. So I think that's kind of the question that we're answering here. And let's just get it on the table. No judgment, no criticism, no arguing about things yet. It's just a that's interesting. I hear you say that. You might even want to repeat that with each other. That's an interesting answer. I'm glad you were able to share that with me or whatever. All right, question number 4. Before we move on to the tactical sections of this actual template and go through the exercises, this is the last question that you can review together as you sit and sip your coffee or your tea or whatever. Oh, I'm out of tea. It's totally dry. Question number 4 is, how do you think about money in similar ways to your partner? And how do you think about it in different ways? No right or wrong here. We're not trying to claim someone else is stupid in their opinions or reckless or whatever. We're just noticing things. It's like if you've ever practiced meditation, which I don't do a lot of it, but I did an app for a while there. When you're trying to meditate, you sit there and you notice thoughts coming into your head. You notice maybe doubts or fears or things you have to do on your to-do list or whatever it is. And the goal in meditating isn't to not have any of those doubts or fears or thoughts. It's just to acknowledge them and go, oh, I noticed that thing. And then you let it go. And you notice the next thing, my brain's telling me I should be doing something else right now besides meditating, and watch these kind of clouds pass. Hopefully we take our partner's opinion of money more seriously than clouds passing. But I think that's a similar-ish kind of thing to what we want to lay out here and go, oh, I notice that we think about things differently in this way. Interesting. I notice you prioritize that. I notice our childhoods were different in this way. We've been brought up, talked about money. And maybe your school told you all the stuff about money and my school taught me nothing about money. Interesting. I noticed that. No positives, negatives. We're just noticing stuff together. Cool. All right, let's jump into section 1. The point of this kind of exercise is to figure out what's literally and logistically happening with your money right now. The two of you are going to come together, open books, and say, here's what we're doing with our money. Here's where it is. Here's where it's not. And this whole section is about being honest. Our goal here is to be blame-free, shame-free. We're just trying to see where the money is, what's happening, because if we don't have an idea of what's happening, we can't talk about it, we can't fix it, we can't be on the same page with it because it's a mystery. I think objectively, this could be the most important step after having that initial conversation, because everything else after this hinges on you guys knowing where you stand with your money right now. So bust out your phone, your laptop, your financial statements, a notebook, whatever you need to do to kind of have all of your accounts listed out, whatever your debt is, whatever your balances are, the kind of money that you have in different places, throw it all together and be ready to share it with your partner. Let's go. So now we're going to answer some in-depth money questions together. The first one is, what is your total income before taxes? This is probably something that you already know because it's like you got hired and we're given a number range of $20 per hour or $50,000 per year or whatever. So for most of us, at least the yearly one is pretty well spelled out, but figure it out for both a yearly amount and a monthly amount, just because both are kind of handy to have for the future. And then a similar question, what's your total income right now after taxes, both yearly and monthly? So this one, if you don't know, if you don't have any idea, maybe you have direct deposit set up and the money just goes in there, just look at your bank statement and you can see, okay, every 2 weeks I get X amount or whatever it is. If you're in sales or some other industry, this can be a little bit harder, but you can kind of average it out and get a range if nothing else. The next question is to list how much debt you have and where it is. So list out what it is, what it's for, the bank that it's at, and the remaining balance that you have on it, and the interest rate. So you'd say something like, my car, it's at Chase Bank, I owe $10,000, and the interest rate is 6%. My credit card, I owe $500, it's also at Chase, interest rate is 19%. So you have this big, hopefully it's not big, you have this very small list of all of your debts, all that information, and you have that together just to collate and understand where you stand. These next two are kind of like budgetary items, but they're really important for you to know because as you come together, you're going to have to kind of merge your worlds and figure out, okay, we're going to save some money in areas and we're going to not save money in other areas. So the first one is, what's your average monthly expenses for mandatory stuff? This is stuff like rent, insurance, utilities, food, transportation, debt payments, your phone, things that you regularly need to survive. Then the next category of stuff would be, what's your average monthly expenses for non-mandatory stuff? So going out to eat, buying fun things, vacations, all that kind of stuff. And for neither of those right now do we want to include any money that you're saving and investing. This is just spending money. So we're talking about expenditures. Lay this out and you can compare that to your spouse. This is not a contest. It's not about whoever spends the least amount wins. We're just trying to figure out where we stand. And then now what we're going to do is to take the second number, which is your total income after taxes, and subtract what your total monthly expenses are from that. So let's say your total after-tax income every month is $4,000. Then your average monthly expenses for mandatory stuff is $2,000, which means you've got $2,000 left over. That's the goal. The amount of money you have left over after mandatory spending. And then the next figure on line number 7 here is what's your monthly total income from number 2 minus both the mandatory stuff and non-mandatory stuff. So basically, what's your after-tax income minus all the money you regularly spend every month. The really interesting thing with figuring this out is if that number is negative, what that's telling you is you're overspending every month. You're spending more money than you make, which means you're going into debt. And you can probably see that with like a credit card balance. You're going, oh yeah, 2 years ago I started with $500 on this credit card and now I have $10,000. That's because I'm overspending. But if we don't do this kind of analysis together, then the other person doesn't know where you stand. Maybe you don't know where you stand. And so we're just laying it all out. Now we get to slightly more fun stuff potentially, which is how much money do you have saved? So this is money that you have in cash, savings accounts, checking accounts, CDs, banking products. How much cash do you have saved? Have that laid out. And then the next one is how much money do you have invested? So this is money that's in like retirement accounts, like maybe a 401k at work, 403b, an IRA, maybe a taxable brokerage account invested somewhere. And then this also applies if you have money somehow invested somewhere, whether that's, online in crypto, or maybe it's in a business interest somewhere, anywhere else other than the stock market, list that here as well. So now what we have between those last two is a total of all the money you have saved, all the money you have invested. We put that together. These are your liquid assets. And then now we get to do one of the most fun things, which is figure out what your net worth is. So we've got your list of assets from this last question. Then up above, the third question was how much debt do you have and where is it? So we take your assets, we subtract your debt out of it. Now you have your net worth. That's a cool mountain to climb and summit to reach to find out what your net worth is. And then if you have been saving or investing each month, then lay that out here too, because maybe you say, okay, I've got a $5,000 net worth. On average, I'm saving $100 a month and I'm investing $100 a month or whatever. If you are able to lay out all of these figures, collate all that information, share that with your partner, figure out where you're at if you didn't know before. Now you're on such solid footing in terms of having a place to start. You actually know what's happening with your money. You know what's happening with their money. There's a chance there's some discussions that are happening at this point. There could be some feelings shared about one of you being slightly more responsible than the other one, that kind of thing. But the point here isn't to be able to point fingers at somebody else and say, you should have done a better job, you're making mistakes, whatever. As is with any relationship conversation, it's to understand where they're coming from, what's happening, and how do we get on the same page? We know where we stand now. How do we work together to figure out the next step? And that sets us up to be able to move on to section 2, which is all about what we want together to happen in the future. So let's jump into it. The questions to answer together now, instead of kind of separately with your own separate transactions, are what large spending events do you want to see happen in the next 5 years? Buy a house, buy a car, have a vacation, buy a big, nice gadget, a MacBook, a camera, whatever it is. In that kind of realm, what do you realistically want to see happen? Then if one of your steps is we want to buy a house in the next 5 years, then start to figure out how much homes are selling for that's similar to the one you want to buy. You can easily do research online totally for free from places like Zillow or Redfin or other real estate sites and search for like recently sold homes in your area. You can kind of sort by that and then browse the asking prices for the homes in the area and just take a little survey of your expectations. Okay, I want to live on this mountainside in a 6,000 square foot home, but I only have 400 grand to spend. Well, probably not going to happen. But this way, at least you get an idea of where you stand. This next question might not be clear right off the bat, but I'll help you work through it. What are your money goals for the next 5 years? If you need to or want to, you can write down yours separately from your partner. You don't have to necessarily come together on it. So if you have an idea of yours, you can write down 1 to 3. Your partner could write down 1 to 3, and then you can compare. But in general, If this isn't clear yet, then just imagine 5 years from today. So you and your partner are 5 years older. You've been living together or whatever your situation is for 5 more years. How old are you? Put a number on it. Okay, we're 26 now. We'll be 31. What are you doing for work at that time? Are you at the same job? Are you at a new job? What are you getting paid? Be realistic here. We're not going to be like, I'm going to be making $1 million a year being a foot model on OnlyFans 1 day a week. Like, okay, maybe you've got the best feet in the world. That's probably not going to happen. Let's be as realistic as we can be here. Project out. Where are you? How much are you getting paid? How much money do you have saved? How much money do you have invested? How much debt do you have? Where do you live geographically in the world? But think about the time between today and 5 years from now. And then think about, okay, what could we potentially do to make those goals happen? You don't have to flesh it out yet. That's the next stage of this whole process. That's section 3. But just start to kind of brainstorm. What would that look like to connect these dots over the next 5 years? And then we're basically going to repeat that same process for 3 more time periods. So what are your money goals for the next 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years? So if all that stuff seems ridiculous and unclear, and I just can't even imagine, that's ridiculous, I have no idea where we'll be. Well, no one has an idea where they'll be. But think about, ideally, based on what you know today, which is all we can ever base anything on, where will you be in 20 years? And this isn't a vision casting exercise. This isn't about manifestation. This isn't about, something crazy. It's about, based on my understanding of how things should progress, here's where we might be. And so there's a very decent chance that you're very uncomfortable with all of that and that all of that seems very kind of murky to you. So do however much of that you can. But even after doing however much of that you can, think about this. Have you ever answered these kinds of questions before? Have you ever been challenged to lay out all your finances, think about a 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan before? If so, how do you feel about working through all of it now? And if not, really, how do you feel about working through all of it now? Because you could potentially be really uncomfortable with this. It could be really strange. It could be really invigorating. So I want you to jot down your answers and also how you feel about this and share that with your partner and go, wow, I did all of this and I feel so excited about the next 20 years with you because I'm excited to figure out a balance of work and life and set up our goals together and do this and that. And I think we're going to crush it and I'm willing to do whatever work it takes. Somebody else might be like, I need to go take a bath and be quiet for 2 hours because I'm freaked out. Okay, good to know. Totally fine. And then also at the end of this whole process, just think about and jot down if you can, take notes. What other questions and thoughts bubbled up as a result of answering these questions? Because what we're talking about here is a lot more than interest rates and bank account balances and inflation and whatever. It's not about numbers. It's about you guys as people. What questions did you answer for each other? What other thoughts came up? What kind of fears maybe came up? What got you excited? Be open about all of that stuff and jot it all down. All right, now we move into a slightly better section, which is one of my favorites actually, which is section 3. How do we get there? Let's say you were able to lay out some kind of idea as far as where you want to be in the future, what kind of goals you want to have for together. Hey, we want to have a vacation every year. We want to buy a house in 6 years. We've got some idea of goals and some kind of timeline. How do we bring this into reality? How do we make this happen in real life, in real terms? We get to bust out my goal spreadsheet, a very simple goal tracker. I'm not saying that you have to use this. You definitely don't. Use whatever system that works for you. Use a whiteboard, use Notion, use Post-it notes for all I care. For me, I like the digital version and I like the spreadsheet specifically because it's simple enough that it's fairly timeless. I mean, it's basically just paper. But the beauty of the digital copy of it that's linked to my Google account is I personally am not going to lose it, where I will for sure lose paper. Like right now, I've got this little clipboard thing that I got at my old job, and it's like this list of stuff that I need to get done. Like I need to change my SSD formatting. I need to change the settings on this camera. I need to see if my iPad can work to get pictures off of it with this adapter. Like this is all fine and good, but in like 3 days, I'll have lost this whole thing probably, or like thrown it away. So I need something that is going to stand the test of time, whatever that is for you. Track your goals there. It could be more than one place too, especially initially when you lay this out. I wouldn't be afraid to put them in a few different places just to make sure that you don't lose them, because the goal is we're going to come back to this once, twice, 3 times per year, probably not more than that, and just update this. And then the next year, you're going to come back to it again and go, how can we keep working on this goal? And it's just a seldom thing. You look at it every now and then and you move on and you get back to work, but you need to have access to it over the course of the next 5, 10, 20 years. And as you'll see here, I've actually been working on this since 2021. So I've got old dates in here. I've got 2021 as like an example, but you can update this, or I can update it after the video's over and I'll update the dates in here for you. So for this goal category column, I think we can put financial for all of them, but you could also break it down into more specific things like investing, saving, career, that kind of thing, just to kind of keep you oriented whenever you look at this again. And then this B column, the goal overall is to say, what's the farthest out endpoint that we're shooting for here? Maybe that's retirement. Maybe that's become a certain position at work. Maybe that's make a certain income level. It could be having a certain amount invested. Whatever the financial goal is, the very, very, very end goal goes here. And I'll show you an example of this in just a minute too, so you can see it all filled out. And then I personally like to put a time-bound specific kind of endpoint in here. We all know this is an imperfect science. The funny thing for us was that for most of these that I've put in on the financial side, we've actually had them happen sooner than I forecasted on here, because I like to be kind of conservative in the forecast of things. So you shouldn't be ridiculous and be like, I'll make $1 million by next fall, and I'll buy 10 vacation homes by the time I'm 35. Like, let's be realistic here, unless you've got a real plan for that. If you do, by all means, do it. But the goal here is to lay out something that you think is fairly logical, but that still pushes you. We want this to be just outside of our reach of comfort and doability, so that we're pushed, we're encouraged to grow. It's a challenge for us. So here's an example of a whole bunch of these already being filled out and kind of tracked. And so this will give you a better idea of what it could look like. So let's say as a career goal, somebody working in the real estate industry wants to have done $50 million in total real estate deals. This is an income. This is the amount of deals they've processed through their desk by August of 2023. So if this goal was started in 2021, in 2 years, they want to do $50 million in deals. This is very aggressive. So maybe their goal for 2021 was sell my first 2 properties this year. How the heck are we going to do that? How are we going to get 2 properties under our belt? Well, we want to make 3 calls per day, no matter what. Even if it's to just chat, to learn something, to set up coffee, whatever it is, I've determined that a key performance indicator that's going to lead me towards that outcome that I want is making calls. Cool. So you do that. Then your progress, maybe you updated this in mid-January and you're like, first 2 weeks, perfect, batting 1,000%, no problems. Awesome. And then you could have a different goal where you really haven't had any good progress. So maybe you have a savings goal. We want to save $80,000 cash for a house down payment also by August of 2023. So you can see how some of these things are correlated to each other. Like if I do this much business, maybe they could realistically have $80,000 in cash for a down payment by a similar timeline. That kind of thing can make sense. And all of these things, I mean, it's kind of obvious because we just went through this exercise, but all of these things should be reflective of where you guys have decided you want to go together. You want to pursue certain career paths. You want to buy a house a certain date. You want to have a certain income level, and you're okay with what that means in terms of work-life balance together, at least you are as of right now, to go out and accomplish those goals, whatever those goals are. If we're going to travel to Italy for a month every year, we're going to have to work our tails off. So let's figure out a plan to do that, that kind of thing. So then for the savings goal example, let's say the 2021 goal was to save $750 per month automatically into a high interest savings account. Set it up, transfer the money, easy peasy. So the steps then for this year would be to set up the account, to set up the auto deposit, and to move whatever current savings they have over to this specific house down payment savings account. And then realistically, the 2021 progress is we haven't even started. Maybe you came back through and you looked at the spreadsheet and you're like, oh, we haven't done a thing. We forgot this was even a goal. We've been so swamped, or we've decided we don't want to buy a house yet, or whatever the thing is, haven't even started. That's the kind of blunt honesty we want here. And then just as examples, you can have several other kind of categories set up here. Maybe you've got educational goals that will help you along your financial journey to finish a bachelor program, finish your master's program, get a certification, whatever that is. You can have debt as a category. Pay off all of our credit card debt, pay off our current car loan, pay off all of our debt besides our mortgage by whatever date. You can also have purchase goals, because maybe together you say, hey, we want to buy a primary home, or by a certain date we will need new cars. So this is an easy way to forecast out any kind of big purchases that you have planned in the future. And then one of my favorite goals is to plan out a net worth goal, especially when you're getting started. These seem astronomically far away. This is like saying, we're going to take a little ride to Jupiter. Like, it may as well be that far away because it's so impossible. Especially if you're young, you're just getting started, you got a few $1,000s to your name, and you've got a goal like $100,000 net worth. How is that even possible? I just want to encourage you here, if you're on that road, that the first 100K is awful to save. It takes an absolute eternity, especially because whenever you're dealing with those smaller amounts of money, let's say you've got 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever else, and something in life comes up like we need a new car, or we have debt we could be paying off. Why are we working towards this goofy net worth goal? I want to encourage you with this, that it's difficult to get started, and that first 100K is especially difficult because it feels like your progress is just so slow. It feels like saving up that money takes an absolute eternity, whether that's paying off debt and working on your net worth that way, whether that's saving and investing money and trying to bump up your net worth in a positive direction that way. It takes so so long. But I'll show you here at the end a little like investing kind of example and what it means to get started investing early and get this road going early versus waiting till later in life. It's tremendously powerful to get this ball rolling as early as possible. So without this being financial advice, I'm just a random dude on the internet. If I could encourage you to take this goal seriously and work on it as much as you can that aligns with your priorities. You and your partner have got to be the ones that come together on this. This isn't about what your parents want, what your uncle wants, what your boss wants. You together as a couple have got to develop these goals and chase after them. So that's the end of section number 3. Now section number 4 is action. This isn't a part of a spreadsheet. This isn't a discussion to have necessarily with your significant other. This step is literally go do stuff. And I'm going to encourage you here to take a page out of James Clear's book, which is called Atomic Habits. If you haven't read it, it's amazing. Got it right here. This bad boy. It's fantastic. If you don't have time, like I didn't have time, I've never actually read this hard copy. I bought the hard copy because the audiobook was so good and so impactful for me. I was like, I'm supporting this guy and buying a hard copy. Then if I wanted to, I could also reference the hard copy if I wanted to or needed to. But one of his tips in that book is to basically just say, make something as small as possible. What's the smallest viable action that leads you in the direction of your goal? And do that. Even if it's just one thing per day on one of those goals. Let's say you've got 8 goals set up, right? Do one thing today that takes any progress in the direction of any one of those things. If you do that every single day, it'll be amazing how fast you reach your goals. That sounds like it's not enough action. It sounds like such a little cop out, like you should be working on this all day, every day. You got to be reeling in those things like a, focused soldier. That's not what actually works for us long term. Most of us who are human, who are not built like RoboCop or Terminator or some other Arnold Schwarzenegger character from the 90s, we need to have a gentler approach, especially when we're getting started. The smallest viable action, jump on that. All right, now I've got 4 quick tips for you. These are just handy things that I've learned over the years that I think are worth passing on. You don't have to do them by any means. I personally think that they've worked for us, but these are logistical, literal things that you can put into place if you so choose. The first one I learned from a friend, Andrew, and his tip was to open separate accounts for each goal or purpose. And so for him, whenever he had a goal like, I'm going to propose, so I've got a separate account for saving for the ring, or my wife and I are going to buy a house, we've got a separate account for our down payment, the next car, a vacation, a large gift, having a baby, whatever the thing was, he would have a separate account for it. And I don't think that meant that he had like 35 different accounts, because I think a lot of times you finish the one goal and then that account sits there kind of dormant until the next one starts. So you might have 4 or 5 accounts, that kind of thing. But what this does, despite the silliness that it might sound like, it just kind of segments those things out in your head to where you go, oh, I can't spend this money. This is down payment money. This isn't for me to buy burritos and race cars with. This is going to be our future home. And you get kind of jazzed about that. Like, I've got to protect this goal and the money that's supporting that goal. Or this one is for our vacation. There's $1,600 in there. We can't go until that reaches $2,500. I'm not going to impulse buy something with that money because it's the vacation money. And thankfully nowadays there's a lot of different tools that can help you to do this. A lot of different banks and savings institutions and things will let you have different buckets or different kind of intentions with your money. And so it's very easy to kind of segment out kind of a purpose for each chunk of money. I know Ally does this. I think Acorns might be doing this right now too. There's a bunch of them that do this kind of thing. So if that tickles your fancy, open a separate account for each goal. Tip number 2 is to just buy term life insurance. I'm not an insurance salesman. This is not financial advice. But in our experience, it's been amazing to have term life insurance coverage because A, you can get a good amount for cheap, especially if you sign up whenever you're young and healthy. And then just in case something crazy happens, you know that your spouse, your partner, whoever it is taken care of. You put them as a beneficiary, then this isn't licensed to go out and skydive and free climb El Capitan like Alex Honnold and do a bunch of risky stuff. What this is doing is giving you very cheap assurance that for $200 to $500 a year, you can say, if the worst happens, I know my partner is taken care of. Or for my wife and I, especially after we had kids, we said, hey, let's say we both go out in a blaze of glory somewhere and now our kids are orphans. Whoever's taking care of them is going to have some money at their disposal. They're going to have an ability to take care of these kids really well and prioritize their well-being because there's money behind it. Oh, and also if I had to pick an amount to get, I'd say something like 5 to 10 times your annual salary would be wise. I also don't think that like 1 or 2 times your annual salary actually amounts to that much. I mean, it's way better than having nothing. So don't get me wrong there. If you can only afford, $100 a year, whatever amount that gets you in your situation, do that, because something's better than nothing. But ideally 5 to 10 times your annual salary would be great. Then tip number 3 is a very general one that people talk about a lot that you've heard before, and that's pay yourself first. I didn't really get this saying for a long time because I was like, I'm not paying anybody, bro. I'm getting paid by my job. I don't need to pay myself anything. I don't even understand that. I'm not self-employed. What it really means tactically, if you don't already know, if you were like me and you were oblivious, it means after you cover your mandatory living expenses, I've got a roof over my head, I'm eating some amount of food, I'm not going to die today, save and invest the very next thing. So cover the bases, then before you buy anything optional whatsoever, set aside some amount of money to save and invest. And it's amazing when you do this and you don't skip it, because you're learning this lesson on building wealth. You're figuring out, what do I need to do to create margin for this in my life? And you're shoving off other things. You're like, I can't afford Chipotle that way. I can't afford to go buy a race car, because you frankly don't have the money to do it anymore because you've already invested or saved the money. But getting into that rhythm and getting comfortable investing first or saving first before you spend is the right order to do it. It just prioritizes that in your life. It will set you up for a rich life. It's amazing. And then tip number 4 is actually kind of tied to tip number 3, and that's invest as much as you can as early as you can. As you'll see here in about 30 seconds, whenever I show you this next example, if you wait until you're older and you've got life figured out and you've got bigger income and you feel like you've got more money laying around to be able to invest, and you're also more afraid of death and retirement at that point, if you wait that long, you've missed the boat. You've missed the most critical investing years of your life, which are the earliest ones. Now, granted, you'd be watching this at 45 and think like, I haven't even started investing. Maybe I'm screwed. It doesn't mean that you're screwed. It just means the earlier we invest, the better. The best time to plant a tree was 40 years ago. Well, I didn't plant a tree 40 years ago. Okay, the second best time is right now. Go to the store right now, buy a tree, plant the thing. Tempted to go buy a tree right now. We don't have the money to buy a tree. I'm not buying a tree. It's not in the budget. But you get what I'm saying here. All right, time for the example. So let's say you and your partner together are getting ready to consider the idea of investing. You're figuring out the balance of your life. How much do we want to save and invest? How much do we want to live? We want to go on vacations. We want to have a fun life. We want to enjoy things while we're young, right? We don't want to invest too much. Well, that's kind of person number 1 here. Scenario number 1 is that kind of mentality. Let's say you and your partner are 26, you're young little babies, your combined income is 55 grand. You're going to get off to a fairly slow start and you're only going to invest 3% per year to start. So that's this amount, $1,650, you starting with 0 and you started investing. To start off with, this is way better than not investing at all. You're doing something, which is more than nothing. So your income is going up at 3% per year. Then the amount you're investing every year is going up at 1% per year. So when you first started, you invested 3% of your money. The next year you invest 4%. The year after that you invest 5%. So you're still pocketing more because your income is raising up faster than the amount you're investing is, but you're investing at a heavier and heavier pace here. And then also your money is growing because we're assuming that this money is actually invested in the stock market and it's growing by 9% per year. So as you can see, these first few years are just painful. It takes you 10 years of saving and investing to get to 100 grand invested. That's a long, slow, painful process. That's like, what are we even doing this for? There's a lot of time to lose hope, but you're still doing a lot more than nothing. So let's assume that you're going to keep up with the same trajectory. Your incomes keep growing by 3% per year. You keep investing heavier and heavier, 1% more per year until, you're 55. You're very focused on retirement at this point. So you're investing 32% of your income because you've worked up to that stage. It's 2053. You're 55 and retirement's right around the corner and you've got almost $1.5 million saved. Fantastic job, but you slacked off a little bit. You could have gone harder, faster. Here's a setup where the same exact people, the same year, same age, same income, just get started faster. This is the fast start version. So instead of starting investing at 3% per year, you've somehow figured out a way to live like you're still college students and you invest 10% per year. So you start off right off the bat with $5,500 and then your same progression happens. Your income grows 3% per year. The amount you invest grows just by 1% more per year. You probably don't even feel it. It's slowly going up over time. And you notice that you're over $100,000 invested 2 years earlier. So at 2032, 8 years from now, you've got $117,000 invested. So you're 7.5, 8 years in, you're 100K in heirs. You're not millionaires yet, but you're 2 years, 2.5 years ahead of the slow start people. Then I've factored in an interesting kind of thing here, which is you never invest more than 25% of your income. So you've kind of front loaded your investments here to say, we're going to invest as hard as we can, and then we're going to cap it at 25%. So when we're in our early 40s here, we're only ever going to invest 25% of our income all the way until we reach the same finish line. So it's 25% from age 41 to 55. And look at the massive difference in the ending account balance. Over $500,000 more that you have invested. Like look at this last year here. Whenever they're 55, they invested $32,000 out of their total income of $129,000. The slow start people, because they're trying to catch up, invested $10,000 more almost. So you end up with more spending money whenever you front load your investments and you kind of taper off over time because you just didn't need to invest that hard. You put the money in as early as possible and reap the benefits. Here's a chart to kind of analyze the differences here. So this red line is the slow start people. These are the people that started investing 3% of their income per year, and then it's gone up by 1% every year, and then they've contributed really hard at the end of their life over here. I mean, they're trying to play catch up in their 40s and 50s to go, oh my gosh, we've got to save and invest. All of a sudden, we're 10 years away from retiring or 5 years away from retiring. We don't have enough money. We're not going to make it. Where instead, this green line basically pulled out ahead almost immediately because they've been contributing more. But then it starts to work on its own and grow that gap bigger and bigger and bigger, even though they're investing less money. They've eased off the gas, but because of that momentum, their investing account is carrying them forward. And so it's amazing to watch this gap grow over time despite the effort level decreasing. I just love this kind of stuff. So what this is trying to tell us is the important thing is that we invest as early as possible, as much as possible, not so much that we wait until we have a higher income or somehow are more pressured into investing later on because we're afraid of retirement. The easy way is to front load. Or if you want to do things, to me, the most optimized way, you can do the super mega fast start. And this is where your investment contributions kind of pyramid over time because you're going to start out right out of the gate super fast. You're not making that much money, but you're investing heavily. We're talking about 15% of your income is going to your investments. This is heavy, heavy investing. This only takes 6 years to get to be worth $100,000 liquid in your investments. The first group was 10, the next group was 8. This strategy is only 6 years to get to $100,000. And what this is really doing is trying to optimize your life to say, okay, we want to save and invest as much as possible, as early as possible, because that's the way our money grows. But we also want to live life. We also want to be able to go on vacations and enjoy things. And so this is as equally aggressive on the fun side as it is on the investing side. So if you watch here, every year the amount this couple invests goes up by 1% until they reach 40 years old. So from age 26 to 40, they invest 1% more every year. Boom, 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 bumping this puppy up. They peak at 29% of their income at age 40. Then it pyramids back down. So they don't keep investing more and more like the first couple who started slow. They're freaking out by the time they're in their 50s. They're like, we don't have enough money. We're going to die. Everyone's going to die. It's okay. These people are pyramiding back down the other side and saying, okay, now we're going to turn down our investments. We're closing the faucet off to say, we've invested so much early on, we actually don't need to be that aggressive now that we're in our 40s and 50s. So they're investing less and less as every year goes on till they get down to be 55 years old. They're only investing 14% of their income. They're investing $18,000 per year, where this first group was investing $41,000 per year. You think about that extra $20,000, $25,000 in spending money you have when you're in your late 50s, pay for your kid's wedding, go on an epic vacation, buy the Porsche race car that you want, like do all of the fun things because you've done the hard work early on. And then look at the end result. They've invested a total of $556,000, which is kind of in between the two groups. You know, the first group only invested $515,000. The fast start group number 2, invested $577,000. These people who pyramided back down their contributions invested $556,000. But look at the net result in the end. Even though they've invested less than the fast start people, they've ended up with $300,000 more than them, $2.3 million. By the time they're at 55. And this isn't retirement age. I mean, they can coast from this point on. They could invest nothing and be pretty much set for their retirement. But look at the chart. Look at the difference here in the chart and just get a visual of what we're actually seeing here. So the slow start people who kind of took it easy and then ramped it up towards the end of their life, who probably felt like they worked the hardest in their 40s and 50s, end up with the least amount of money. The people who started off fast and then tapered off and only invested 25% of their income in their 40s and 50s still did well. But the people who optimized for the most amount of life, who went really hard as early as they could, who got to that 100K mark when they were only 6 years into their investing journey, peaked how much they were investing at age 40, and then actually tapered back off and optimized for their lifestyle. Not for their financial freedom, not for their investments. They optimize to have fun with their teenage kids, have fun with their aging parents, do all that kind of good stuff. They ended up with the most money. And it's a little bit counterintuitive because you're like, wait a second, they seem like they tried the least hard. I mean, yeah, they had a hard time here in the first 5 or 10 years. It was probably really hard to get used to investing 15 or 20% early on. You don't have a lot of money. They're trying super hard. They're cutting back. But in the end, they walk away laughing because they've got this giant amount of money. All that to say, these are 3 different paths, all with really good outcomes and all with different perspectives on life. Maybe these first people in red have decided to prioritize their lifestyle. They're like, you know what? We want to live for today. We get that we could save and invest more. We don't care. We want to live for today. We're going to invest a bit and we'll end up where we end up. Good for you guys. These next other 2 groups are trying to kind of get ahead of the game whenever they're younger. They're willing to make sacrifices when they're younger to have a different life outcome when they're older. But you'll never know which one of these is right for you guys unless you have those discussions from earlier on in this video. It's not always the answer that has the highest peak year that's the best for you two as a couple, as a relationship. I know for like the first 10 years of my working career, I was like, we've got to have the most money possible no matter what. Let's optimize. Let's go crush this thing and have all the money. But the problem with that is when I'm working 75, 85 hours a week, how much relationship do I have left? Am I actually okay with that in the end? Even though I've had this goal and this prioritization of we've got to have a lot of money, is that really what I want? Is that what my wife wants? Is that what my kids want? And I've had to kind of back off from that goal and go, okay, that's not my end all be all purpose here on earth to have as much money as possible when we retire or to retire as early as possible. It's I've got to spend time with the people who I'm with and who I love now. And so I've had to kind of reassess my own priorities in this thing. And we're a little bit more like this yellow line than anything, but we've really tapered off our investing here in our late 30s because of the stage that we're in and because of the decisions we've made. And that seems to work for us. So the point in this is just to come together as a couple and go, it's not about maxing the numbers. It's not about the simple, obvious things like, do we want a lot of money? Yes. Do we want nice stuff and vacations? Yes. It's what makes us happy and fulfilled as a couple, what helps us to feel secure and safe together, and how do we build the life we want together. I hope this has been super helpful for you and you've been able to sit down with your partner or your spouse or whoever and really talk about money openly and in a safe place, and then figure out what your goals are together. What kind of life do you want to build together? Like I said in the beginning, I got to do this with my wife. We've got to rehash this out because we've been together for almost a decade now. And even though we do talk about money, I mean, you can guess the guy who talks about money for a living is going to talk to his family about money. And despite that, I still think we need to go through this again. We need to kind of hash this out and go, let's figure out where our priorities are and to what degree to turn up or down different knobs to create that reality for us. Maybe this is only a once every 10 years checkup. That'd be kind of nice because you don't have to rehash it all the time. But I would say at any major life event, it's probably wise to rehash this, right? Maybe your parents die, maybe you have a child, maybe you switch careers in a massive way. Probably worth rehashing this discussion out to go, we set up those goals 6 years ago. Now we're in a very different place. What does this mean for us now? And just go through it again one more time. I know it's a lot of work and it's not particularly fun and like energizing for most of us. I think for me it is because I'm a weirdo. But the benefits we get from doing this kind of thing, I think outweigh any of the costs. If you have any questions about this, then let me know in a comment. And otherwise, you can watch this video next and I'll see you guys tomorrow.